Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad's YouTube channel here. I'm PJ, and today in this video we're going to be covering the top 10 decks that are performing over in Japan. Now, Japan has a little bit different of a meta. They're able to play with the Shrouded Fable cards that haven't been released for us here yet, but we are preparing for the World Championship event, so we do want to see what decks are performing so we can prepare to get better and get ready for that next format here. Now, Shrouded Fables is a mini set, so we are going to have a little bit less cards than a major set, and it is a little bit harder to obtain those cards because they aren't coming in booster boxes. They are just going to be the smaller ETBs and packs, things like that. Now, if you want to get your hands on some of these Shrouded Fable cards, you do want to check out some of our sponsors below. We do have PTCGL stores, so you can get them online on your PTCGL account, and then also we have Kayfabe cards where you can check out all of their awesome singles on their website there. The links are down in the description below, but we're going to hop into those top 10 decks and get you ready for the World Championship. All right, and kicking us off at number 10 is Greninja EX. Now, Greninja EX hasn't seen very much play in the meta right now. We did see it a couple weeks ago in the Late Night Special Event 1 come into the finals, but that was a very different list. This is a newer list out of Japan, obviously, and we do have the Dust Noir line. Now, Dusclops can knock itself out and put 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, and Dust Noir can knock itself out and put 13 damage counters, a little bit more than what Sableye can do, and your opponent's taking a prize, but you don't always care about that. Now, if you notice, this deck is playing a heavier Iono count. That way you're knocking yourself out or one of your Pokemon out, and you're reducing the prize cards or the draw cards of your opponent when you're using Iono. So there's a good combo there, but obviously we're going to see that Greninja is going to have the Mirage Barrage attack that can do 120 to 2 different Pokemon. Now, generally, if you have the double turbo attached in this type of list, it is doing 100 to each. So 100 plus 130, that's 230 damage you can potentially put on a Pokemon, which is really, really good here. We do see the 4-2-3 line in this, so a little bit less on the rare candy because you might be using the rare candy for your Dusknoir line because you have 4 rare candies in the deck. We also have Pidgeot EX to help search out everything with that quick search ability, and then we do have the Rotom in here for extra draw, just in case you have a bad opening hand or maybe you want to see some more cards. And what I really like about this list is it rounds it out with a Blood Moon Ursaluna, so if you're at the end of the game, you'll have less energy to attach because your opponent's taken so many prizes, and that works even more in the synergy of Dust Noir. So I really like this list, and I also like that you can knock yourself out, put some damage counters on, and then use TM Devo in this list to just de-evolve your opponent's Pokemon and get that right off the board without having to worry about it. So I really, really enjoy this list. I think that Greninja can do some huge things at the World Championship, especially now with the Dust Noir line. Now, hopping over to number 9 is going to be this Moon list, and what that means is there's 2 different Roaring Moons in the list if you weren't aware by the picture here, but we do see decks like this being used by Azul GG, who adapted that a little bit further, maybe from one of their Discord members. But the Moon combo is so good here, and then we also have the Darkrai V-Star in here to recover your item cards. This deck moves super fast and is really aggressive. I honestly love a deck like this. You do have the option to Moonlight Shuriken with your Radiant Greninja in a list, and Iron Bundle is really, really good. Maybe your opponent's protecting something on their bench that they don't want knocked out, and then you can just use Hyper Blower as the ability, put yourself in the discard pile, and your opponent now has to put something active, or you could just knock it right out with the Roaring Moon EX with the Frenzied Gouging attack. There are a lot of stadiums in this list, so you have 3 Pokestop, rather, so you can churn through all your items. There's so many items in this list. We do have a new item that's shown here from Japan, which is the Nightly Stretcher. Now, that card reads that you can pick up either a basic Pokemon or a basic energy from your discard pile and put it right into your hand, so you can reuse those Roaring Moon EXs, or maybe even just the baby Roaring Moon is something you want to attack with, so you're trading favorably because you do have single prizers and double prizers in this list. We've got Mew EX here just in case You have to get around something like Mimikyu a little bit easier, but you can also copy attacks like Radiant Greninja. Maybe your opponent's playing something that uses that and can get really hurt. Maybe they don't have Manaphy on the bench. Lots of tools in this. So this Moon Toolbox is a really cool, innovative deck. I honestly love it. And if you love aggressive decks, this is definitely a deck you're going to want to check out. Moving over to number 8. Now, this list isn't so innovative. It's just Lost Box. Now, Lost Box is a little boring at this time, and honestly, I think it's so low on this top 10 list because there are cards to counter it, which we'll see in some future lists here in this video. But Lost Box is still doing big things over in Japan, so why not include it in this top 10 list? This is very similar to the winning list for NAIC from Andrew Hedrick. And if you look at the list, there's so many powerful attackers here. The one card that is different is the Nightly Stretcher, which we talked about in the last deck. So you're able to pick up one of your attackers, like maybe your Iron Hands, maybe you're going to use your Sableye again. We don't have to worry about Super Rod. There are 4 Super Rods in the deck, though, so your recovery is really, really good. It churns through so fast because there are 8 switch cards for items, and then we do have the Prime Catcher here for Gust and Switch, so technically there's 9 switch items. You do have manual switch with energy removal, or I'm sorry, just manually retreating, and then you do have the rescue board also. So lots of ways to get things into the Lost Zone here. 2 vacuums, really, really good. We've got the full 4 Colress and a Pal Pad. So many ways that you can aggressively start with this deck and then just churn through your deck like there's no tomorrow. That way you can get everything that you need where you need it, hit those Mirage Gates on turn 2 or maybe even turn 1 if you're lucky, and then you are just blowing your opponent out of the water. So if you like semi big brain decks, this is something that you want to try. I know if you haven't tried it past NAIC, definitely something to consider going into the Worlds format. Okay, now we're on to number 7, and it's Lugia V-Star, everybody's favorite bad deck. Now, Lugia V-Star is actually performing still over in Japan, and we saw that one of the top performers in Japan used to be Lugia. Now, there are so many better decks out there, and I think that Lugia does have to adapt to the meta, just like a control deck would have to. Now, in this list, we do see a heavier count of the Minccino and Cinccino line, so you're able to hit those big numbers for single prize Pokemon, and I think that that's worth a lot. Obviously, there's a little bit more consistency in this list, where you have 3 Professor's Research to dump things like your Archeops into the discard pile. It's still keeping the same amount of item cards in this list, where you have a 4-4-2 line, where your 4 Ultra, your 4 Aroma, and then your 2 Great Ball. Now, there's a couple of other cards that are sprinkled into a Cinccino list. We see Iron Hands is still sticking around. There's only 1 Lumineon in this list, where I think that you might not need the second one to search for your supporters as much anymore. But obviously you don't want to start a Lumineon in most games because it is a 2 prize liability. We do obviously have for both Iron Hands and Lumineon the Legacy Energy here, which is the only thing that's really selling this deck right now, because you can change a 1 prizer into a 2 prizer. You do have the ability to also attack with Lumineon and put it back into the deck, so you have it off the board, and hitting for 120 is pretty good while you're doing that too. We do have the Blood Moon Ursaluna still sticking around because it's such a great attacker, especially late game. We know for cleanup, hitting 240 is really, really good, especially if you can do it for 0 energy. And if you didn't know what Blood Moon Ursaluna does by now, definitely check out that card, because it does reduce the energy count for its attack based off of what your opponent has taken on prizes. Now, speaking of which, to deny something is the Fluttermane in this deck, and I've seen a lot more Japanese lists put Fluttermane back into the deck. We see a lot of American or North American lists also putting Fluttermane back into a Lugia deck, and that's really good, because if your opponent is going to attack with the Blood Moon Ursaluna or try to loop a Blood Moon Ursaluna, if you have Fluttermane in the active, obviously the ability is shut off. Same thing with Radiant Greninja decks and Radiant Charizard decks. Radiant Greninja not so much, but mostly Radiant Charizard. If you're playing a Lugia mirror, you want Fluttermane in the active if your opponent has Lugia V in the active too, because they can't use their ability to get their Archeops on the bench. So many good possibilities for Fluttermane, and it hits for 90, spreads 2 damage counters onto the board. So I think that the utilization of Fluttermane in a deck like this that is pretty aggressive with single prizers is really good. So if you want to check out a newer Lugia list for the Worlds format, this is definitely something I would take and adapt however best you feel. I do see that they are adapting to Japan to not include the 60 HP Mincinos anymore, and I think that that's kind of how we went to. And the Call for Family attack just isn't that great. There's still one in here, but having the 2 jamming towers is really good. Aside from that, the list is pretty straightforward for a Lugia list, so we're going to hop over to number 6. It's cold and it's back at number 6. We have Chien-pao EX coming out of nowhere in Japan. We do see these lists start to do better and better into the Worlds format. There's a lot of big 2-prize Pokemon that Chien-pao wants to take those knockouts with. And if we see this list, it's a little bit more aggressive with the energy. So we have 9 water energy opposed to the normal 8. And we have 1 lightning. Obviously, for the Iron Hands play, we do want to have that. But having the 9 energy might feel a little clunky, but it is going to help us reach that bit further into those bigger decks, like I'm talking about Charizard EX or Dragapult EX. We want to hit those big numbers a lot of the time, and the only way to do that is to get more energy onto the board. We do have only a 3-3. I know those middle backs believers are going to kind of shake their head at this list, but having the 3-3 here feels a little weird, and I know that we're taking this reference from a lot of the Japanese lists where there's no 70 HP Bridgebacks. So things that are going to spread damage like Sableye or Dragapult EX, it's going to be a little scary. Same thing goes with the Bidoof line. We have the Bidoof Bibarel for your draw. And then what's new is the Pheasantipity EX here. Now the Pheasantipity ability is actually reading once during your turn. If any Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, you may draw 3 cards. So being that we already have a draw engine with the Bibarel, now we're going to get to draw an extra 3 cards. So we can have a hand of 8. Say we get Unfair stamped to 2, we're still drawing 5 off of Bibarel, and then we're still drawing an extra 3 if we got knocked out last turn. So I think that that's really good. Another adaptation to this list is there's 2 nightly stretchers, so we can get back our Chien-pao. As you can see, there's only 2 in this list here. So I like that. And then getting back 1 extra energy isn't the best thing in the world. We were seeing the energy retrieval, but I think that because you're running a lower count of Pokemon, you do want to recover those a little bit easier, and that item definitely helps you get there. Everything else is pretty standard. There is 1 counter catcher in this list. You could potentially swap that out for a boss's orders if you felt necessary, but I think that this list is pretty clean, and I definitely love to try it out if I'm a Chien-pao believer. All right, before we start to talk about this list, I do want to give another shout out to our sponsors of the channel and the team. Advanced GG is helping us supply all of our players with the most energy possible with all of their supplements. You can go ahead and check them out at advancedgg.com, and the link down in the description is our affiliate link, so you can go through us in the description of this video to get there and see what supplements work best for you. And also our affiliate and sponsor of the channel here, Ultimate Guard, which is helping us sleeve up all of our cards and keep them safe in our decks and in our binders. So you're going to want to check them out and send them some love too. Use Ultimate Guard products for all of your Pokemon TCG needs. Now at number 5 here, I know you're saying, PJ, why is Gardevoir EX so low on this list? Because Gardevoir is really getting pushed out of the format the deeper we get into these lists here, which you'll see. And no spoilers, don't check the pinned comment here for all the lists. You can see the rest of the video. Keep watching. I'm sure you'll be excited about what I have to talk about. But Gardevoir EX is still a powerful deck. It's a great deck. There's so much aggression in the late game for this. There's so much comeback potential, and we see that here with the list. We still have similar counts for Iono and Arven and TM Evo. Still have similar counts to a lot of the lists from NAIC. For energy here, where it's the 7-2 split, there is double Monkey Dory, which I really like, and I've been liking because I've been playtesting this deck on the PTCGL ladder. Another thing we notice is there's 2 Professor Turo scenario, so you can utilize not only getting your EX off the board in those swing turns where you don't want your opponent to take a 2-prize knockout. But you can also double use the Monkey Dory. So if you have Monkey Dory down, you have Dark Energy in hand, you use Monkey Dory, you Turo it up, and you put another Dark Energy back down. And what's nice is now we're including the Nightly Stretcher, so we can get that Dark Energy out of the discard pile at the same time we're using Professor Turo. So there's so much synergy in this list. I don't know if I really enjoy the Mimikyu and the Klefki. Those are kind of the flex cards for me, but you're going to want to definitely check out a lot of our coaches over on the shufflesquad.com, where they've been playtesting Guardy. If you love Guardy and you think that it's great for the World Championships or maybe those cups and challenges that you're going to want to hop over there too. So we're going to hop over to the top 4 lists and see what's next. Coming in at number 4 is Raging Bolt. I know everybody's favorite aggressive deck here. We see it doing so well in the current format, and we know that it's going to do well in Cups and Challenges before the format switches over for Worlds with Shrouded Fables, but it looks like it's still performing over in Japan regardless of what format they're playing. Now, you can see the pretty vanilla list here. We still have the bundle, we still have the Sandy Shocks, no crown or cornerstone Ogerpon in this list, but so many aggressive pieces. You could see by the count of not only the Raging Bolt EX, but also the Teal Mask Ogerpon. We have 4 Sadas as normal. We have 4 counts of both your Nest Ball and your Vessel. Only a 3 count of Ultra Ball, which I think is fine. No new cards in this list, but if you want a base list to take your Raging Bolt to the next level, this is definitely a list you're going to want to start with and see if there's any cards that you want to adapt. Maybe you're not drawing into things as easily as you want, but definitely a super aggressive deck. I love this. You're going to want to go second with a list like this for sure, but adapting to the meta, it's still a great deck. And chiming in at number 3, one of my personal favorite decks is Regidrago V-Star. Now, Regidrago V-Star seems like a insanely powerful deck in this new format for Worlds because you do have the aggression of all the different types of attackers here. Now, we talked about Lost Zone Box before. We do have the Kyurem here, and I know I always say Kyurem the wrong way, but it's totally fine. But this has the attack that you get to discard all of the energy attached to this Pokemon, and then it does 100 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon. So you can wipe out 3 off the board. You obviously have the aggression to start off with your Dragapult, placing damage counters on things, so you can get rid of Manaphy off the board to utilize that card. We do have a 280 damage pop with the Giratina V-Star. We've got Mew EX in this list, so you can hit those stall decks or decks that have Mimikyu or Cornerstone, so you have your counter there. There is 4 Regidragos in here, so you can start that more optimally instead of the 4 Teal Mask Ogerpon, which I've seen in some other lists, to get the Energy Excel going aggressively at the beginning of the game. There's 4 Professor's Research here too, so you're just super aggressive, churning things into the discard pile. Again, a really aggressive list to get your energy out of the discard pile. You still have the Nightly Stretcher here and the Superior Energy Retrieval. So there's so many ways, and obviously Regidrago V-Star also has an ability, which is awesome. So you can go ahead and get things out of the discard pile that were discarded. So if you discard your Prime Catcher, you can always get that back too. Prime Catcher, I feel like, is the best A-spec here. I know that some lists in Japan are using the Scoop Up Cyclone, which I still feel is pretty fine, but I love this list. I think that maybe you can utilize a couple more Dragon Attackers instead of the double Dragapult EX, but everything else is great. I know that there's no more Goodra V-Star. That's something I might add if I were to play this list, but a super solid list, and I can definitely see why it's coming in at number 3 over in Japan. And here we go. We've got our number 2 list for the Japanese meta, and I see just Dragapult and Pidgeot. It's the best way to play it, I feel, and I think that we've seen the Pidgeot engine just prove itself time after time. We still have a 4-3-3 line of the Dragapult EX and a 2-2 line. We still have similar counts of everything else in the list like this. I do love the Feather Ball inclusion. in a similar list, but we also have a new supporter that's showing up over in Japan where we have the Colress's Tenacity, or at least that's how it's translated right now. You get to search your deck for a stadium card and an energy card, reveal them, and put them in your hand. So now you're able to use a supporter to find your Neo Upper Energy, and that's going to allow you to attack for just one energy attachment when you've evolved your Dragapult. There's still 4 of the rare candies in this list, and, you know, having the aggression that early just to search out a supporter, maybe you pop your Lumineon to find your Colress, and just get everything set up. Pidgeot's going to get you the rest of the way. This is such a cool list. I do like the jamming tower in here too. It shuts off those annoying items. You don't want your opponent to attack into you for more damage or prevent some damage. So having the jamming tower as the stadium looks really cool. I would potentially add a collapse stadium if I felt like I was losing games because of 2 prize Pokemon being on the board. But everything else looks cool. You can always maybe cut one of the vessels because there is enough ways to find your energy, I feel like, in this list. So you should be just fine. You know, we've got 4 Arven and 3 Ionos here. We do have Mela, and Mela's been such a great card when I've been playing Dragapult. It's that comeback card that we needed when we lost Raihan, especially in a deck build that uses fire energy. So I love that for this deck. I would potentially cut something to put a Radiant Charizard in the list, but aside from that, these are how the lists over in Japan have been looking, and you can definitely see why it is number 2. And finally, the obvious winner, Charizard EX, as the number 1 deck performing over in Japan. There's been so many lists, so I did take a lot of them and compile them into one huge list here. So this is showcasing what the power of Charizard EX can be. Now, we know that Charizard EX does ramp up damage over the 180 base damage for each prize card your opponent has taken, and what a great way to do that with that Dusknoir line. So you do have the aggression of not only knocking out your Dusclops and then putting it back in with Super Rod, and then you could do it again with the Dusknoir. Now you're able to overcome things like those stall decks, which is really good, and it puts a lot of aggression on other decks where they don't want you to hit above that 210 number. This is also utilizing some of the newer Dark EX Pokemon like Pheasantipity, and Pheasantipity, we know that if our opponent took a prize card last turn, we get to draw 3 extra cards, so that takes care of our Bibarel engine. We do also have the Patreon EX, which once per turn, you may switch one of your bench Dark Pokemon, except for Patreon, so we need another Dark Pokemon into the active, so now we don't have to worry about switching our Pokemon in and out of the active spot, so that's really cool. So having that switch aspect is really good too. We want to utilize the Binding Mochi. Now, Binding Mochi, honestly, is probably one of the best cards in this list if our active Pokemon is poisoned, which actually goes hand in hand with a Pecharunt. If your new active Pokemon is now poisoned, you can't use more than one controlling chain's ability, blah, blah, blah. But if we're looking at the Patcharunt in combination with the Mochi and in combination with the Dusknoir, there's so many different ways that Mochi can help out and be that aggressive way that you can hit into your opponent for the extra 40 damage. So this is better than Choice Belt. It's better than Defiance Band. It's not as good as Maximum Belt, but this is also for any type of Pokemon. We're going to hit 40 damage into our opponent's Pokemon. So really, really good here. I love the list. I think that having one Turo is a little sketchy. There's only one way of switching our Pokemon, but again, we do have the Patcharunt, so we can get around a couple of things. Unfair Stamp is really, really good in a list like this. So if you want to adapt your Charizard EX list, honestly, it's the best deck in the format, I think, for the World Championships. So let me know down in the comments below if you think this list is good, what you would change, and, you know, what you think of Charizard into the next format. You can also go and check out a couple of other lists on the channel here. If you scroll back through all of our videos, we did post a couple of the early Charizard EX lists for the World Championships too. But this is the list that I came up with based off of the Japanese list, and I can definitely see it being number one for sure. Okay, and we're going to close things out here. You saw the top 10 decks. You can go ahead into the pinned comment and make sure you copy and paste those into your PTCG Live or start building them with proxy cards. You can use our awesome friend over Justin Basil has a website, justinbasil.com, where you can print out some of those proxies if you don't have the translated versions of the card too. And it's definitely a resource you're going to want to utilize going into this new season. We obviously saw all the changes to the championship structure, but we want to get prepared because we want to know what decks are going to be good that we can take to the league challenges, league cups, just your local leagues. If you want to have some fun with Pokemon, if you're really getting into Pokemon, these videos are great and we host them every single week. So you're going to want to stay tuned. Like this video, hit the subscribe button if you want more content with this, and then share it with some friends that want to get into the Pokemon TCG. I'm PJ signing off here for this video, but we will catch you next time on the Shuffle Squad.
Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.